Hello, podcast fans. You've chosen a very excellent episode to listen to today. It's Alex Davy. He creates board games. He went to elementary school with me, your host with the most, and we delve into some pretty amazing stuff. Hey, get a dictionary out because we use some big words in this episode. Plus, Tucker and I talk about how we skirted the entertainment education system and what happens to your ding-dong if you get flipped inside out. All of this and more on today's episode of JJ Meets World.
1, 2, 3, 4. J.J. Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is! He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. J.J. has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirls as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called JJ Meets World.
Let's see if we can name all the presidents. Okay?
Okay.
So, Washington.
Lincoln.
Well, let's try and go in order as much as possible and then fill in the gaps.
John Adams.
Yeah, okay. So, Adams.
Jefferson.
And?
After that, the order breaks down in my head.
So...
And I already know that, like, this is,
okay.
Like, we're going to get upset at ourselves.
Fillmore. We got Millard Fillmore. I don't know where he is, but then we got Adams again with Quincy.
Yep.
And then we've got Lincoln.
There's a Franklin Pierce in there.
Pierce.
Okay, so Martin Van Buren.
Oh, yeah, Van Buren.
Old Kinderhook with his Piccadilly Weepers. Mm-hmm. Andrew Jackson.
Who's on Money? Have we got everybody who's on Money?
I bet we don't. Well, we have Ben Franklin's on Money, but he's not a president.
No, and neither is Alexander Hamilton.
Yeah, there's Alexander Hamilton. Tyler.
Yep.
Now, I mean,
James Madison.
We haven't even gone into the 20th century yet.
Nope.
So we're working on.
We're on our way.
We're working on the ones behind us because we'll have to come back. Because like Hoover.
Yep, I'm gonna put Hoover on there. And then
you have
Johnson.
Do you have Fillmore?
Yeah, I got Johnson. Yeah, Fillmore and Johnson.
Roosevelt
twice.
2 different Roosevelts.
Times 2. What about Nixon?
Oh, so we're in the 20th century.
Yeah,
now.
Kennedy.
Well, Kennedy, Johnson, Ford, Carter, Reagan, Obama, Bush, Clinton, Trump.
Keep going.
I just said Trump twice, but the second time it sounded like a fart. That's because the word Trump and a fart are basically the same thing.
Right, and it just mixes
basically
together.
The same thing. I mean, I think we got to kind of jump back in time again a little bit. Oh, wait, Eisenhower.
Good old Ike.
Isn't there a Polk?
What about, there's a Polk. And then what about that guy who started the schools? It was all about schools. Woodrow Wilson.
Well, and McKinley?
Yep. Who's the one who died in 30 days?
Garfield, I think. Oh, goodness. Who was the one who was president, then lost, then was president again? Grover Cleveland?
I got Cleveland on here.
You have Cleveland in there?
No, I don't. Oh, here we go.
I think it's him that.
He's got a great name like Grover.
Yeah. There's a president who was president for a term, and then he lost, and then he got elected again. I think it was Grover Cleveland. Well, so, how many we got there?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31.
So we're down by about 14, I think. There's 45. Trump is the 45th president.
Yeah.
Kennedy, is he on there?
I got Kennedy.
On there. Truman?
Oh, yeah. Truman Capote, one of our greatest presidents. Okay. So now we're up to 32.
Oh, got stuck in the bathtub. What was his name? Taft.
Yeah, Taft. William Howard.
I gestured to you not because you've been stuck in a bathtub, but because you played him
that
in
character.
Mercedes Ray.
trying to think, was there anybody else from Mercedes Ray that we didn't include in this thing?
Grant. Would shout out to, unfortunately, the late Hank Kachuk, who just passed away.
That was a bummer. I was sad to see that.
Super bummer. Hank was a great guy, played General Grant. And Greg Carlson played Hoover. So that's already taken care of. FDR, we've got. Tyler, we've got. So I think we've got all the Mercedes Ray presidents. That's a pretty good list,
This is a
though.
good list.
We actually did a pretty good job.
For a public school couple of kids, this is a good list.
Yeah. I'm actually surprised we got as far as we did.
Well, you did a lot of work on that list. More than I did, I think.
See, the thing was that I knew I could not do them in order. I knew I'd be jumping around. I don't have, like, the order memorized. But I love me some presidential history.
It's good.
So definitely I know some presidents.
There are songs that people have created to remember things in their lives. For example, I know that there's a song to help you memorize the name of all the presidents in order.
Okay.
The only reason I know the states and their capitals is because of the show Animaniacs.
Which is maybe the greatest educational compact disc ever made.
It truly is. And they've got a president's one, too. And it's just Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
That's not a president's
Indianapolis.
one.
Which one?
They have a president's one?
The Animaniacs have a president's one as well.
On that same album?
I believe, at least the one that I have. Because they also have the nations of the world. They've got the planets.
Okay.
There's also, on the one I have, there's a thing about the UN. And it's you and me, we're gonna have some fun.
I think we
down
do
by the East Riverside.
There must be different editions then, yeah, because the album I have doesn't have that.
There's like 40 Animaniacs albums out there.
Okay.
Yeah. I love when like education can be hidden in entertainment. For example,
spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down.
I got through so many tests and not having to read a book because of the show Wishbone. Thank you, PBS. That show was a quality show, and if you're not familiar with it, here's the deal. Wishbone is the name of a dog who lived with a pretty milquetoast dullard kid. And this kid would get himself into situations and Wishbone would be like, and you'd hear his voiceover. This is just like the story of King Midas. And they would cut back and forth between the story of King Midas, where Wishbone would play the main character, and back. They did Sherlock Holmes, and they did Journey to the H.G. Wells' The Time Machine, and Huckleberry Finn. Just story upon story upon story, and this poor little dog has to dress up in costumes all the time. I hope he gets a bunch of treats.
Do you think about, like, how come we never saw any interviews with that dog after seeing that show for so
without
long?
a doubt. Also, whatever happened to the guy who did the voice of Wishbone? Because you really can't do anything else.
Yeah.
If I'm at McDonald's and I'm taking an order and it sounds like, wait a minute, is this Wishbone?
So I have to make a confession, though. Like, I would watch Wishbone, but I rarely watched it because, hey, Wishbone is on. I want to watch Wishbone. For me, PBS was usually what I turned to when there was nothing else on the other channels.
Oh, really?
Usually.
I tuned in for Wishbone. And I also tuned in for Arthur.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Why
does that make sense?
Just does. Just does.
I loved to consume media as a kid. I didn't have a lot of friends. I wore sweatpants.
JJ, just take this box of Cheez-Its and watch the Wishbone. Mom is busy.
Okay. Mom, did you know this? Oh, God. Why can't he just be into sports like other boys? Not me.
JJ, I can't hear you over my smoking. Sorry.
Come on, Mom.
I don't,
adjust the antennae.
I don't know why my impression of your mom is a sanitation worker.
Yeah, it's get the garbage, pull it out. It's time for everyone to take a bath.
Just throw it away.
At the end of the day, I don't think it matters how we gain knowledge. It's just that we do.
Yeah, that's 100%.
I mean,
agree.
I'm probably missing out greatly on some of the story of King Midas by watching the Wishbone edition of it, but I get the gist I need to survive in a game of Jeopardy.
Just because you need to learn something doesn't mean you need to suffer while doing it.
Right.
So if the goal is to learn a thing, if by learning if there was like a magic pill with a bunch of information in it, and you could swallow it and then suddenly just have information in your head, that would be fine. Be nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm. Edutainment is, I think, probably one of the harder things to create because you're trying to get fact and fun in the same breath. And I like, my hat goes off to people like the makers of Sesame Street or Word Girl that's on PBS right now. PBS really led the way for educational entertainment for children. But there's stuff for adults too. Look, like the History Channel has even kind of embraced it with little pieces of, historical reenactment stuff.
Well, even look at The Daily Show and the brand of comedy that it has sort of inspired now. So we now have like 5 or 6 different shows on TV with like a talking head newscaster persona type character who is basically giving us news is inside there, and then you can kind of tell when they switch to a joke and they're making it humorous. John Oliver being, I think, maybe the best current case right now. But yeah, I wonder too if that's because our generation was raised on edutainment.
Probably.
That we're used to there being something in some of our entertainment, not necessarily like the Power Rangers.
Oh, you didn't learn important stuff?
Teamwork, but that's about it.
Yeah. I learned that if you have clay in a special oven, you can create monsters.
Magic wand, make my monster grow.
I always wanted to know, like, what did she go on to do? Because did she not speak English? Because someone dubbed her voice, right?
I mean, I think originally the footage was the original Japanese footage that they dubbed over. I think there have been a few different actors that played Rita Repulsa in the TV show, but I'm not totally certain.
Who played Lord Zod? Because he was ripped.
No clue. Well, I don't know.
Although I want to know why his body was all scarred up and red like that.
It was almost like it was Inside Out.
Yeah.
What was that guy, that man in the skin tight Inside Out bodysuit that would have educational videos that we'd see in elementary school?
Yeah.
It was pretty creepy if you think about it.
Yeah. Or you could be like, this is the spleen. And then he'd have like different ways to get you to notice different things. But his
Inside Out body had no penis.
Yeah.
None.
Well, because there's no penis inside your body.
Well, yeah, but you could see the inside out of the penis, though.
No.
Yeah.
What's the inside? There'd be no inside out of the penis because it didn't have.
Your penis is a 3-dimensional object,
Right.
JJ. Of course, there's an inside out of your penis.
But it's sucked inside now.
Everything's
on the inside.
It's just reversed.
It's just on the inside.
No, it's just like it's not just on the inside. You could just push it out the other way,
like out of the butt.
Not out his butt. You just, if it's inside of him when you reverse him, right? So you're looking at me right now. Imagine my penis is inside me right now, right? So it's pointing in like this.
Right.
And then if I push on it from here, I could unfold it outward, and then you'd have an inside out penis that's outside of you now.
I still say that it's on the inside. And it's like the only thing that's in the husk because everything else is on the outside.
Yeah.
We'll have to agree to disagree on this one. Hopefully at one point someone has put together a website about this.
I've never said penis this many times this early in the morning, I don't think.
We're recording this, and it is rather early for enterprising gentlemen on a Sunday. In fact, we got to hurry this up because we got to get to church.
Yeah, that's right.
So our guest today, I've been friends with for a very long time. We delve into that. And is one of just the most cool, creative guys ever. It was amazing to sit down with Alex Davy because we just fell right back into the old routine. When we were in high school, I remember Alex pulling an old typewriter to school, and for like $1, he would write you a haiku and type it out.
Yeah.
Amazingly interesting guy who's got a very cool job nowadays.
Yeah,
he works at
games.
Fantasy Flight Games, making board games and tabletop experiences. And he also gets to handle one particular license that you're going to go, wait, what? And we get to talk to him about what it's like to handle a major international, in fact, I mean, intergalactic property, what it's like to make a board game, how he arrived at this point in his life. And we even get to touch a little bit on things like Trollwood News at Noon and fun stuff like that. I think you guys are really going to enjoy this one.
If you're really into the space fights movies, you're going to be into this one.
You will enjoy it.
I don't want to spoil it for people, so we're going to call it Space Fights right now.
We also have an announcement because we've got a giveaway associated with this episode too. So be listening in, and we'll give you some details on how to win. Everyone's a winner, but one person's going to be a really big winner. So sit back and relax. This episode of JJ Meets World features our good friend Alex Davy.
JJ Meets World.
When you were in elementary school, did this ever happen where all the boys in your class made a pact to pee into the same toilet and not flush the toilet?
No, Tucker, that's pretty weird.
That
So
in second grade.
Trying to make
Just-
it overflow.
just like to-
or-
We called it making orange juice.
oh my god, to just like super saturate.
We just wanted to super
one toilet.
saturate it.
It's a bonding experience.
So we would all take turns on the same urinal.
Would it be together or like
No, like you'd wait in a
sequentially?
line.
That's quite.
Imagine a bunch of kids passing on the other two toilets because they want to pee in that one.
What poor bastard janitor had to deal
Mr.
with-
Tullifson.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Tullifson.
Did you ever accomplish anything? Because
No, it just gets really dark after a while, and then I just think,
really dark.
yeah, and then we only did it like 4 or 5 times.
Only 4 or 5 times.
I think we stopped after that.
Well, when nothing happened, there was just no payoff.
Well, the payoff was pretty late, and I think kids started dropping out of the group too, right? So after a while, you could only get so dark.
It was down to just the hardcore members of the.
Yeah, I can't remember how long I stuck it out. It wasn't till the end, but it was close to it.
diehard member of the same urinal club.
Yeah. Okay, now we're recording.
Okay. Well,
We
we missed all that solid gold.
Right, yeah, I know. Like, and actually, liquid gold.
Liquid
it was
gold.
liquid gold.
We're
fact.
not. It's not uncertain that it won't be in the podcast.
Right.
So.
Yeah, we could bring it back
you never
around.
know. So this is, I guess, the official start, but we had a prefix to this episode.
We did.
Alex Davy, welcome to JJ Meets World. Happy
Hey.
to have you.
Happy to be here, JJ.
We've known each other for a long time.
Has been a long time. In fact, I think you 4th grade.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have known you as long as I have known of the fair land of Fargo.
Oh, good. Do you associate me with Fargo most times?
Did you move
Say
to
yes,
Fargo then?
yes.
Where'd you move from?
I grew up in San Diego,
oh.
and then I was the weird kid
Well,
in
you didn't
4th
grow
grade.
up. You lived there until 4th grade. You
Yeah.
grew up here as well.
Well, yes. I guess
The mold had been set by the time Alex
The die
got
was
to Fargo.
cast.
Yeah.
I will cop to that. I have been, I think, thoroughly Midwesternized at this point. In my 34 years, most of them have been in the frozen north, so I'll cop to that. I was in denial for a long time.
And so, what brought your family to Fargo?
Job stuff. My dad's an architect, and the architecture market in California and the just skyrocketing price of everything out there got pretty serious. And he's a North Dakota man from way back. Minot.
So this
Why
is
not?
his
Reason's
his
the
dream
reason.
to come back to North Dakota.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it was his dream, but it was where a job was.
Alex had one of the things that I always thought would be really cool as a kid, and you tell me if it was. You lived really close to our elementary school.
Yeah.
So, I mean, less than a block away.
Pros and
Door
cons.
to door.
Pros and cons.
So tell me a pro and then tell me a con.
All right. Well, pro, the skating rink was right there. Mm-hmm. Con, I hated all you little bastards.
We're always hanging around, causing mischief.
Well, the con would be that my parents were right adjacent to school, and that's not something you want generally as a child, or or as an adult necessarily.
You were 1 block away?
Oh yeah. So I'm on. My parents still live there. It's I won't give the address on air so that my stalkers can't find me. But it's like not even. It's like a half block from Claire Barton.
Because I went to Horseman and I was 1 block away.
Yeah.
I was the next block over to Horseman my whole life, and I loved it.
It's convenient.
It's convenient because I learned I would walk to school at a very young age, just in kindergarten, because it was just a block away. And I had a tendency to forget things at home all the time.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I could run back really quick and get
Convenient.
them and go back again. Like in kindergarten, I forgot that it was like the day for Halloween. It wasn't Halloween day. It was like a day or two before.
But it was a costume day.
It was costume day.
Oh, you
and I
have a
forgot
costume.
about that. And I showed up, usually late, because I would like dilly-dally on my way there.
You'd think I only have to walk a block.
I only have to walk a block.
Do.
And then walked in, and all the kids were in costume, and I flipped out, and I ran home. And my mom threw together like the crappiest ghost costume you could possibly imagine, which was
the sheet with the holes in it situation.
No, it was a white sheet tied around me almost like a dress. And then she took white makeup and just threw it on my face. And
Oh, she wasn't willing to ruin a good sheet just for her child.
Because her child fucked up and didn't remember the fact that today was costume day.
I have to imagine
Mrs.
it
Dawkins'
probably
class.
wasn't just a plain white sheet either. There's maybe some kind of like
I bet there
aspect.
was the
Some floral print on there.
My brain was a kindergarten brain when it remembered this. So that detail I've lost to time, but I just remember it was hasty.
Is there photographic evidence of this?
There probably is.
Oh my god.
I just found the home movie that has the completed ghost costume from the actual Halloween night on
When
it.
you stepped it up a little.
When my mom stepped it up a little because she had time to do it. Which was my first year in Fargo because I moved from Grandin. So
Grandin,
North Dakota is 30 minutes outside of Fargo.
It's pretty much like you're saying move from San Diego to
Oh,
Fargo.
yeah,
basically
Grandin
same
to
thing.
Fargo is
Yeah.
pretty much the
Just the
same.
culture's
Okay.
essentially
so this
the
is why
same.
we get along so well.
Pretty much.
We have so many touchstones in common.
Very much so. Very much so. But on that family video, I also found the Christmas where I got the Ninja Turtles Nintendo game.
Oh my god.
So I have the moment of me in my Donatello pajamas opening up a Turtles Nintendo game.
And then you soon discovered that it was a Sisyphean task of pure terror.
No one told
You
me
can
about the
never
water
beat
level at
2.
that point.
Yeah, it's impossible. Those mines.
Oh, it's just anxiety inducing. I remember the anxiety sound of just like when you were taking too long to get there and the clock was turning down and you were losing turtles because you kept hitting those fucking electric seaweed.
No.
Why is seaweed electric?
No, between that and flipping Battletoads, So is it too early in the podcast for like a kids these days moment?
No.
But fucking kids these days, they don't know how easy they've got it with the video games.
Yeah.
In my day, man, you had 3 lives and you were going to lose them all within 2 seconds of that speeder bike level or that underground turtle level.
Just compare like a mobile game where they literally play themselves for you. Like
you can just crush candy forever.
There's games with auto modes where you just hit auto and then it's supposed to be a turn-based strategy, but you're just watching your guys fight.
It's our glorious automated future.
Oh my goodness.
Machines for everything.
Automatic respawning of a character too. People don't realize, like, listen, you could put an hour into a session of Sunset Riders.
Oh, yeah.
And then all of a sudden have to start over at the beginning.
Start. And there's no extra lives. Once you
Li-
shoot a barrel
life
and grab
management.
one. Absolutely.
Life management.
Do they
us a
still
lot, I
make
think.
Game Genie? Is that still a thing?
I don't.
Oh my god, I haven't thought about Game Genie.
Boy,
in
would I love to
20
attach a Game
years.
Genie to my iPhone, though, just to get the codes.
Whatever happened to Game Genie
I
Corporation?
recently thought about it just the other day because I'm eventually going to probably just buy a Genesis Game Genie. There's so many of them; they're super cheap. You can get them really cheap. But yeah, basically they had to make a product because games were too hard. Yeah. So hey kids, own those games but never seen how they ended. Get Game Genie.
Game Genie's here to help.
You know how at
Assuming
Streets
it
of
doesn't
Rage is
crash your
difficult?
cartridge.
Yeah. Okay, so let's progress this a little bit
All right.
beyond 4th grade at this point.
Yeah, we'll be here forever.
Yeah,
at this rate.
what'd you do after high school? Like when Fargo was like
Wow,
so
you
long.
jumped way ahead.
Yeah.
All right.
I think we pretty much,
JJ wanted to skip the moment that we met. That's why.
Let's just skip all
Yeah.
of the Fargo stuff. Well, I left and I never looked back.
Good. So long, Stinktown. I did that once and
Put
then I
that
came
in the
back.
rearview mirror. No, I mean I didn't go far. I went to the Twin Cities.
And how was it?
It's all right.
Yeah.
No, it's pretty good. I love Minneapolis. I don't love winter. Never have, never will. But it's a cool city. A lot of great stuff to do. It's not too big.
Where are people eating at these days?
So
where's
many
the
good
neat
places.
spots?
Oh my god.
Seward Cafe.
The what?
The Seward Cafe.
Seward Cafe. That's old school.
That's the only place I know.
That's been around since like '73 or something.
And the cool kids that eat there.
That's true, actually. Yeah, it's a cool neighborhood.
That's the only place that I know.
But you nailed it. Nailed it in one.
Yeah.
So you're good. You
Yeah.
don't have to know anything else.
They have the
about
best
the Twin
hash
Cities
browns on
dining
the
scene.
planet.
They do have good hash browns. Yeah.
Have you been to the Wienery?
Oh yeah.
No.
Yeah, so the Wienery has amazing hash browns where they will mix in like garlic and then
That's on the
pop
West Bank.
chili and coleslaw on top of them.
Ew.
Oh, don't
and
until you try it.
That place is filthy too.
It is
it's
awful.
Like it is just caked in like 40 years of grime.
and it's the
and
size of the
smoke.
studio we're in right
You
now.
guys hungry? You want to
Yeah,
go
if
eat
that.
at a? You guys hungry? You want to go eat at a filthy hash brown place?
Yeah, that's pretty. Hey, sometimes the filthiest restaurants have the best food.
It sounds like a greasy restaurant.
It's
so
real
like,
greasy.
So
Oh, yeah.
like it's like bars have closed. You're hungry. Are they open?
The Wiener,
they
yeah,
daytime
they serve
thing?
like the college crowd, so they have weird hours, but they are open later than most places.
Feel like it's the type of place too where they run out of stuff on the regular. So if you go in,
Yeah.
you're like, oh, I gotta get a Polish sausage. They're like,
we
nope.
sold them. Have a bratwurst.
Yeah,
Out of
you're
season.
here. What are you gonna do? Go down to the Chipotle?
Well, we got pressed pig anuses left. You want one of those?
Wait, hold on. Let me check. Do we still have pig anuses?
Oh no, we're out of
No.
those. It's horse Cossacks.
There would probably be
That's all we got left.
some sort of hipstery turn on the name, though. They probably wouldn't just say horse anuses.
Oh, it would be
Equestrian
It'd be
portals.
organic.
Equestrian portals.
yes, yes, medallions of Equus. What?
Sometimes I look at a menu and I think, well, just tell me what you want to tell me
Horse
here. Like,
medallions,
yeah.
yes.
when I see someone use the word aioli, I think, well, you really mean mayonnaise, right? I mean, that's what you're insinuating here. You just wanted to use
JJ,
a
it's
fancy
an
word.
infused mayonnaise.
Oh, infused.
How long? Okay, so here's a question for both of you, and this may sound arbitrary, but it is related. What's the longest you've ever spent watching someone make your drink? That's the level of fancy bar you've been to, like in minutes.
It's in St. Paul. It's the Midtown Diner.
Okay.
Had a little bar on the side, and I was talking to the bartender, and he said, "Yeah, I'm famous for my Manhattans." And I'm like, "Oh, I'll have a Manhattan."
Well, that's 3 ingredients. How long could this possibly
Oh
take?
my God, he had like a mortar and a pestle, and he was doing this. He's like, and hold on, you got to shake this, and you got to let it sit for 5 minutes.
Did he
until
do
the
any
sediment-
tricks? Did he like flip stuff around?
No, but he twirled. He spent more time twirling his mustache than he did pouring into the cup. And let me tell you something, it wasn't even that great of a Manhattan. I've had better.
I like that this has just devolved into like a grumpy old men level. Kids these days, hipsters, etc.
This show is all about tangents, so that's fine.
And another thing.
What's the longest you've waited
Oh,
for a
dude,
drink?
like 12 minutes. It was in Seattle. Do I have to say more?
What was it?
Fuck. I don't know. It was
Probably had to like milk a cow in front of you.
He actually milked it right into. What was
it
that
right there.
splash of frothy dairy that curdled with the orange juice that really gave it that umami
Jesus.
flavor?
Umami flavor.
He actually grew a sprig of parsley from a seed in front of me rapidly, like one of those rapid, time lapse.
Yeah, he had to wrap it in one of his dreadlocks to activate
the
this
nutrients.
I think
sprout.
that was one of those places where you had to like knock on the door and pretend that it was really secret.
Yeah. I don't
But
have
really, they're hoping that you review them on Yelp.
Right,
They're
right.
like,
Yeah, they've got a
"Please."
Yelp page, but it's a secret buy. It's a big secret.
I don't have a drink that I can think of that would take long to prepare. It probably would have been in a coffee shop at some point.
Sure.
But it would have been because it just took a while for the coffee to brew. So that would have been it.
Coffee can get to that same level of excess, right? Like you get a pour over.
Sure.
You get one of those. Actually, there's a place in town that does really good coffee. What is it? It's got some crazy name. It's
Yeah. Starbucks.
yeah, that's the one.
I was trying to make us as provincial as possible
There's
to this
a
big city boy.
there's a coffee place in town now that's known for their toast.
Okay.
Young Blood is what it's called, and they apparently
Toastmasters.
They're really great. I think
used-
that there's a lawsuit pending with the Toastmasters group.
I literally within the last week used toast as an insult.
How
In
so?
what
I was
sense?
talking to Pam Straight, and I was like, "Hey, what's your husband up to this weekend?" And she goes, "Oh, he's probably doing his puzzles, his crossword puzzles." I was like, "Oh yeah, is that what he likes to do for fun?" She goes, "Yeah, he does crossword puzzles." And I said, "Oh yeah, well he does it. Does he make some toast with nothing on it?"
Nice dry piece of toast. Harsh, but fair.
But fair.
One of my favorite insults is when you compare someone to being milk toast.
With a Q. Any insult with a Q in it is good in my book.
Yeah. So what are you doing nowadays, Alex?
I'm designing board games, miniatures games.
So board
Fighting
games.
those Star Wars.
are without a doubt in a renaissance right now.
Yeah, it's getting kind of crazy, actually.
There's a huge market. People are playing them all the time. Heck, there's probably about 1,000 podcasts dedicated to board games.
Oh, 1,000 Kickstarters just started, and they will all be funded.
Yep.
In fact, they're all funded right now.
Yep,
they're done. They all made 5 times their budget.
It's like you felt
People are
something. It's like 1,000 Kickstarters, and at all once they were all silenced.
Oh, I see what you did there.
So the older generation, when they think of board games, they think of a Monopoly or the game of life. Board games are much more than that. There are some that are incredibly complicated but super fun. There's some that are very complicated and
no
not
fun at all. Yeah, there's a lot of those.
Yeah. But I think just like podcasting, it's something where if you've got an idea for a board game, it can become a reality.
Well, that's the cool thing about it. I mean, it's a very accessible form of creativity because unless you're working with software, if you're working analog, which is pretty much all we do at Fantasy Flight Games, all you need is a good idea and some like cardboard and little wooden meeples and stuff, and you can make a game. That's what's pretty awesome about it.
So you brought up Star Wars, so let's touch on this. I was recently on a podcast with Alex where I was invited, and they're like, we're going to be opening this brand new
that's right.
Star Wars game. And they're like, we'd love you to be like on this podcast with us. And I said, okay. And they thought I was a giant Star Wars fanatic. And I'm a fan. But at one point, like, they're like, so JJ, tell us a little bit about, like the backstory on like this character. And I was like, what? I booked my tickets to
Yeah.
see,
This is Kiari Buddy from the Jedi Academy.
what color is their lightsaber going to be?
So,
Puce.
so Alex, I just found sort of a strange parallel between you and another guest we've had on the podcast
Okay.
before. His name is Alex Rydell.
Okay.
And he's an undertaker here in town.
Oh.
And he's a friend of mine from high school. And in high school, if you had asked me, what is Alex Rydell going to do for a living, I would have said he's going to be a violinist.
Okay.
He's going to be a musician. Had no inkling that he would have become an undertaker.
Whereas
And
if you'd asked me what I was,
I would have said writer. He's probably gonna be.
I thought you were going to say necrophiliac.
No, yeah. Well, I knew that'd be your hobby, not your profession.
well, yeah.
Not what you're going to be,
Well, you don't
not what
wanna-
you are.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You don't want to burn out.
But so, like,
You
so
want to keep your passion.
I never would have guessed, will be professional game maker, right? Or so.
Yeah, me neither, to be honest.
So how did that path sort of present itself to you? How did you find yourself where you are now?
Well, the first step is fail at being a journalist. So I just go to journalism school, get a job right out of school, and be happy about that. Work at a newspaper. Then, this is easy. Just follow this 9-step process. Everybody, you too can be a game designer.
I'm taking notes because I don't have a job right now.
So then get bored with that. Get sick of city council meetings and the dysfunction of Maplewood, and move to Russia, Moscow or St. Petersburg, you can choose. Teach English for a year. Make sure while you're there that the entire global economy collapses. And so when you get back, it is absolutely impossible to find employment. Then do freelance work for like 9 years. Make a cool $18K a year from writing, and fill in the gaps by like working at movie theaters and DJing weddings, driving a bicycle cab, copy editing, technical writing.
Goodness. So like if we had a job fair, like I would be hearing all of this from the job fair person.
Yeah. So after you've done that for an incredibly long time and gone deep into credit card debt, then you can perhaps consider. Also, before this happens, you have to freak out, sell all of your worldly possessions, move to India for a while, do nothing, come back to Fargo, move in with your parents for like 7 months, then move back to Minneapolis. Then you get a job designing games. It's easy.
Is that going to be a game?
Millennial job hunt?
Yep.
Is it okay if I do
It's
India?
not a fun game.
Can I do India before Russia? Is that okay if you swap?
Yeah, you can
them?
mix it up.
Okay.
I think you could probably choose any destination.
Got it.
No, it was a weird trajectory. I did do a lot of like editing, copy editing, proofreading work for Fantasy Flight Games. My buddy Sam Stewart, a fellow Fargonian.
Yeah, Sam.
Yeah, great guy. He also works there.
Oh, really? I didn't know
As
that.
does Rob Brantzig.
What?
I know, right?
I know 3 people who work there, not one. Jesus. Okay.
Anybody else? I think that's it for Fargo. But yeah, so he used to work at the paper with me. He worked at Lily Suburban News,
Okay.
which I believe has folded or is about to fold as it is a newspaper in 2018.
Yeah.
But he got a job when I was in Russia. I think he got the job at Fantasy Flight Games. He got a job in the role-playing department as an editor. And so he would just send me just giant tomes about like 40K or whatever, like crazy, nerd stuff, role-playing games. And I probably did editing work for him like pretty regularly for about 3.5 years. And so when this, game development job opened up, I jumped on it. He let me know about it. And from the description, it sounded like I was going to be writing like flavor text, which for those not familiar with nerd terminology, that's like the little scraps of world building that they print when they, need to fill out the space. Your game text isn't long enough. So you're like, oh, Lim Dul, the necromancer. What about that guy? He was pretty scary. And so I thought, hey, that sounds fun. I've been a huge nerd forever.
I just discovered this podcast needs flavor text.
It does. But so I applied and I was like, oh, I'm a writer. I can write that and edit things. That sounds like a fun job. And they liked my resume and I had some contacts in the company and they were like, okay, here's a design board game mission for this game Descent. And I was like, is this a game design job? That's interesting. So I went out and I bought this game, and
having never played it before.
Having never played it before. Well, it had just come out like a couple weeks before, so it was pretty new. And like I went to this game store, and I actually went to the Fantasy Flight Games game store because it was conveniently located. And I just found some random people to play it with, and I think I just like sat there for 5 hours playing this game, and then I bought it and I took it home and I scanned in all the map tiles and stuff in Photoshop and whatever. I used that journalism degree.
Yeah.
And my programming knowledge and popped that sucker into InDesign. And I guess I did a pretty good job because I eventually got hired.
Awesome.
So
how long have you been there now in your current position?
Forever. Like, it's the longest I've ever done anything in my life. 6 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good for
you.
you.
A long time.
Good for you.
For me, that's insane. Up until that point, I don't think I'd lasted any single thing for longer than a couple
You're
of
a
years.
rambling man.
I am a rambling man, for better or for worse.
So walk us through the process of designing a game. So how does it start?
Sheer terror.
Yeah.
That's step one. I've only actually designed one game.
Yeah, but you've been around it enough.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, I'll draw a somewhat pedantic distinction between design and development. Because for the bulk of my career, I've been a game developer, and that's a different can of worms. It's you are taking an existing game and you're expanding on it, or you're working with a game designer who has ideas and you're filling in the gaps and fleshing it out or what have you. So that's been the bulk of my work. The game that I've worked on far and away the longest is this game called Star Wars X-Wing, and it's this Star Wars miniatures, exactly. Like fighter combat game. So you build a little squad of ships and you fight somebody else's little squad of ships. And so the game existed. They had a core set, and like I think I came on in like the 4th wave of content. And so all I did for very many, many years was design what each new ship would do. So a new expansion would come out, and
that is so fucking cool, Alex.
It's pretty sweet. It's pretty sweet.
That is so cool.
What does a K-Wing do? What is a TIE Interceptor supposed to do?
I was like, do they all have to begin with a letter of the alphabet? Why
Most
can't the
of them
rebellion
do.
come up with like...
Also, can we talk about how the Star Wars universe features a non-alpha numeric language called Arabesh, and yet their ships have English letter names?
Well, and Dagobah has a snake, like just a regular old Earth snake.
Yeah,
so,
why not?
Yeah, sometimes there's bleed over. That's panspermia. That's what that is.
Ooh,
That's what that is.
pulling out the big guns.
There are certain things that just cross galaxies.
Right.
Well, like
snakes, they're just a tube.
they
right?
cross intergalactic
Yeah,
space.
they ship easily.
That was like when God was learning how to like make clay animals. He was just roll.
Yeah,
that was
he's like,
easy.
okay, here
He's
we
like,
go.
"Oh, that's simple. That's one in the bank. Either that or it was late in the process and he was out of ideas. We're just feeling lazy.
At
That
least
was like the 6th day. He's like, done.
At
It's
least
a tube with a mouth.
At least because Star Wars was a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Yes.
That means that it and Star Trek could exist in the same universe because they're.
Oh, and in fact, if you read my 1,400-page fan novel, you will find that Captain Kirk and Luke Skywalker go from rivals to lovers.
Oh.
In the span of only 1,000 pages.
Well, I'm sold.
Yeah, look it up.
So we're already on a tangent where we're talking about Luke and Kirk having sex. So why don't we get back to what we were talking about before? Sorry.
Well, so
Yeah, where were we?
let's go with this.
Sorry.
So when you're working with a property like Star Wars, right? How incredibly limiting is it? Like do they send you a giant, massive binder of, hey, here's what's canon, here's what's non-canon, or here's, we want this to be featured more because we want to make a toy out of it?
It's not to that level, thankfully. For the most part, it's post facto analysis. Like, we will send them a rough description of what we want to do. I was like, we're going to do a TIE Interceptor expansion. TIE Interceptors are found in these films. We're going to represent them in the following way. The product will contain the following canonical characters or what have you.
TIE Interceptor was the best ship to play in TIE Fighter.
Oh, dude.
Anyways.
You're not wrong. Speaking of old schools, actually, it's funny. The game X-Wing, the miniature tabletop game, is full of like TIE Fighter and X-Wing nostalgia. Like all the people who grew up when we did, who played those on the computer, which they were hard,
Yes.
demanding. It was like you had to learn a flight sim to play those stupid things.
But at
it was
least
like engine wash is damaging your shields. It's like
I only played TIE Fighter, but I played it all the way through, and because
That's impressive.
The physics
It
on
ain't
that
easy.
game.
Yeah,
It took me a summer.
Yeah.
It took me a summer to do
I never
it.
made it through one of those games.
But now, if they were to make a game like that, I would just press
You'd be like,
autoplay.
the hell? Yeah, it would just take you
watch
right
it.
through
And
it.
then it's like, oh, you need to buy more balloons.
You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to go home and watch a YouTube channel with someone who's just playing little TIE Fighters.
Be prepared for the finest graphics 1994 had to offer.
They were so good.
So in the post analysis then that they do, has there been like a major no, you can't do that at all? Like, has there been like a major smackdown?
That'll usually happen in like the concepting phase. Okay. But they've let us do some cool stuff. They're really flexible. And it's been really interesting because we had the license prior to Disney coming in and buying up everything. So we had hella good timing in that respect. Because when we acquired the license, when we made that agreement, it was still just Lucasfilm. And Star Wars had been kind of laying somewhat dormant for many, many years after the prequels and after that kind of bad reaction to that universe. I mean, there'd been like the Clone Wars TV show, but even that had been over for a very long time. And they weren't really doing anything with the properties. So we were just able to pull everything we wanted from like old novels, Legends characters, TIE Fighter, like Merrick Steele's in the game.
Wow.
So,
and then when Disney goes in and buys Lucasfilm, and then there's this sort of canon paradigm reset where most of the stuff that used to be considered canon that wasn't in the films, that was the extended universe, became legends, right? So they can draw from them however they want, but they're not necessarily canon.
They sort of reserve the right to, dig up those characters and redo them however they want.
Got it.
And I think they've done that a few times already. They've pulled some Legends characters into real canon or whatever. But we were sort of grandfathered in because we'd already done this game.
Got it.
It was already full of EU characters. And a lot of the times for X-Wing, it's just a name on a ship card. You don't really need anything. You don't need to know who Asege Tuketu is.
Sure.
Miranda Doney. I guarantee you don't.
Well, so
even as deep a Star Wars nerd as you are, I guarantee you.
Well, I'm
because that's one line in Wikipedia that I found that name on. Oh, by the way, I know so much dumb stuff about Star Wars.
What is the dumbest thing about Star Wars?
Oh, easily the Cyclopean dude who kidnaps Princess Leia, but it turns out it's a robot Princess Leia, and then she murders him with her laser eyes. What is that guy's name? Oh, shoot. I'm gonna have to look that up.
Well, I think we've at least found the answer of how they're going to fit Carrie Fisher in episode 9.
Oh, he's got such a stupid name too. He's this like, and there was like other Cyclops dudes in this story arc. Is this like the Dark Horse Star Wars days were insane.
Yeah.
They were just doing whatever they wanted. They had a giant green rabbit named Jackson who like jump kicked people and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it
Ka-chop.
sounds like the same group who's putting together like the action figures for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. When they're like, I don't know, it's a fucking samurai bunny.
why not?
Yeah.
It's what they still have molds of other things that they can
Yeah.
cobble together.
Oh yeah, so
That's
have you
probably
guys
what that
watched the Toys That Made Us?
Yeah.
That show?
No.
That was really fascinating for me because I'm sort of in that industry, and so it's interesting to hear little details. I'll just give you one where like the He-Man toy line. The reason he's got that giant like black tiger is they had a totally out of scale tiger that they just had the mold of. And they're like, I don't know. This looks about like he could ride it.
We'll put a helmet on it. It'll be fine.
Literally, yeah. So they saved a ton of money on that because they had that mold built. They just shot hot plastic in that thing, and suddenly He-Man's got a battle cat.
Related episode. If you want to listen to more talk about nostalgic toys and how they were made, check out episode 27 of JJ Meets World Rebel Toy Box with Ben Larson.
Ooh, I'll have to do that.
Who is Tim Larson's twin, or not twin brother, his
Older brother.
Well, Tim. So that's funny you mentioned that because wasn't Tim Larson printed twice in the yearbook?
And and that is the
And that's
previous
referenced
episode
in.
of Tim has an episode as well where we talk about that exact thing. So
That was amazing that we all remember that. That was brilliant.
Yeah.
What was his? Was he wasn't listed as Tim twice? It was Tim and
he came up with a name, or no, he took the name of a
he-
different kid, or he took the spot of a different kid.
Yeah.
I
Did
think.
he do that deliberately?
Yeah.
Was he masterminded that?
Yeah, he
It was
did.
Amazing.
So back to what I was asking though about canon.
Right.
So in like large fantasy worlds where they have to, and when it's a money making thing and the fans are rabid, they know they have to keep a Bible that says what is in and what isn't canon.
There's a whole story group. There's a gentleman named Pablo Hidalgo who does all of the like lore. He's like the lore master.
Okay,
it
so-
might even be his official title, which is kind of amazing.
So then let's say you make a new Star Wars game right now.
Yep.
And you send stuff into them and you have a new character that you've added named JJ Gordon. Does that, if they accept it and they go, okay, yep, that's fine, you can have that in your game, by the current rules, does that make JJ Gordon part of Star Wars canon? Or how do they treat that new character that's come out to a new game that they've allowed?
So we almost never get to make new characters on the games that I work for. But there is a game called Star Wars Imperial Assault, which is also made by our company. And it's sort of an interesting cross between like role-playing games and competitive games because you have one player who plays like the forces of the Empire, and then you have a group of players who each play a hero. And so those heroes have names and they have little backstories and stuff. Like you could play a smuggler or an ex-clone soldier or something like that.
Make
So
sure you're
they
talking
were-
right into the end there, sorry.
Oh yeah. So they work really hard with the story group to get that stuff approved. For us, we're much more focused on like the competitive tactical side of things. So mostly we're just digging for names. We don't actually. I don't think we've ever created a character in my department because there's so many out there.
Sure.
Especially with the new films and the new with Star Wars Rebels, the TV show, like all the stuff that's out there. There's so much to pull from. There's no real need to invent stuff. However, we did get to do one thing that I thought was really, really cool. We have a version of X-Wing that's like epic mode. So you can get bigger ships because the squadron size is the X-Wings, TIE fighters, little starfighter level ships. But you can also buy like the CR-90 Corellian Corvette, the Tantive 4 that you see in the very first shot of New Hope, fleeing from the Imperial class Star Destroyer. You can buy that and you can play with that. It's got a mission in it and everything. And we wanted to make something for the Empire, but there's nothing canonically that's like a equivalent size class. The smallest thing that we could do would have been unproducibly huge, and it would have been too gigantic to play with in this game without radically shrinking the scale and making things weird. Because believe me, if nerds care about one thing, they care about scale.
They do.
Oh, how
That is huge.
Oh, and how.
I have an uncle who has been a Star Trek nut since the show first came on TV ever, the original show. And I remember in the 90s him showing me books where like he could tell me like the sizes of different classes of Starfleet ships, and
That's how you know he was a proper nerd.
oh yeah, and like we would look through and they would have the whole thing scaled out. And I'm guessing then that they hire someone like you or someone else who's a writer who's creative to go, listen, we want a book that comes up with all this shit that like nerds care about.
Oh man, for Star Wars, that's a huge part of it. There's so many like guides and
That
dictionaries.
is the coolest
and
job.
that there's one guy who like heads up the whole story group, and he's written so many of those tomes. Like, do you want to know exactly what Boba Fett eats for breakfast every day? Do you want to know the 80 things he carries around with him? Sonic disruptors and Z6 backpack missile and whipcord launchers and wrist rockets, boot spikes. It's flipping endless. But to circle back around
Flamethrower.
Yeah, heck yeah. It's got the wrist mounted flamethrower. Absolutely. Z6 flame projector. Better believe it. So everything's Z6. That's one thing I've noticed in Star Wars. Like, I don't know why they're obsessed with those, because it's just random letters and numbers. But that is one of those people there. Their brain must just continually return.
Yeah, they punch it into like the Nava computer.
It's just in their head because there's so many random things that are just Z6 this and that. I don't think it's intentional. Maybe it is. I don't know. But anyway, to circle back around to the end of this incredibly long story, we were looking for a comparably sized ship to the Corvette for the Imperials. And they let us invent one, which was really cool.
Nice.
They let us hire a concept artist, and he generated a bunch of sketches, and then we sent them to LFL, which is Lucasfilm Licensing, for approval, and they looked at it, and they liked this and that, and then they sent it back to us, and our really amazing sculptor, Bexley Andrejak, worked on that, worked with the conceptual artist to build that, and then we got all the way through early design, and actually my coworker Frank and I took a look at it, and we added one last little thing, which is that we changed they had these sort of big naval turret guns that look like World War II things, and we changed it to these like flat panels that pop open and like shoot, because we thought it would look cooler. So we had that one little visual contribution, and so that existed for a few years. And that would not be considered canon. Okay. Because apparently the like most canonical stuff is movies, TV shows, and like big budget video games.
Yep.
Everything else is kind of like it's it's legends or it's whatever.
Got it.
It's not. It's a kind of a hazy line. But the cool thing is in Star Wars Battlefront 2, they took that ship, the Imperial Raider, and they used it. It's like the main base that your characters fly around in. So because Battlefront picked it up and put it in a video game, now it's canon.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you
that
can
was
go into
pretty sweet.
Battlefront and you're like, those are the turrets that I changed right there.
Exactly. Yeah. No, you get to see them shoot.
That is pretty sweet.
And they actually modified our design a little bit. They made it like kind of a custom. It has its own like thing going on, which is kind of because they like defect to the Alliance, and then they like take some panels
Alex,
off
this
and
is
stuff.
literally the only card you ever have to pull to win any argument with any other Star Wars nerd at any time.
That's true.
You could be like, motherfucker, I helped design a ship that is canon right now.
I tweaked the turrets on a canonical vessel.
I'm more of a George Lucas than you are, because I actually had some actual meaningful effect on the universe.
So that was pretty cool. We had no idea they were doing it either. So we saw the trailer for Battlefront 2, and we're like, holy shit, that's the Raider. What?
That's awesome.
So that was very cool. That was a cool moment. I don't know that we'll ever get to do anything quite like that again, but it was very cool.
So at some video game company, they're sitting around playing your game. I mean, really, like when you think about it like that.
They must have at least seen it somewhere. And I think, it's kind of a fortuitous circumstance. Like they probably grabbed it for the exact same reason that we did, because the Empire in the films doesn't have anything small enough to easily depict in a video game. So if you need something for your like special ops team of badasses to like jet around in, you can't just give them a Star Destroyer. There's like 30,000 people on there, or like 120. That's some ridiculous number. So I think they had to fill the same hole that we had to fill. In terms of like not having an adequately scaled vessel, and they're like, "Oh, they made this. Can we use this?" I assume. I have no idea how that went down, but it's pretty cool.
When they
either that or they're just huge X-wing fans.
So when they start creating new stuff, right? So when they're putting together the new episode series, or when they're doing Rogue One or Solo, Are you able to pull from that as well, or is that an entirely different licensing?
No, we can.
Quagmire.
It's pretty cool, but we're really limited in terms of like what they'll send us because they don't want leaks to happen. And oftentimes we're working so far ahead because we're trying to get products out roughly to coincide with the film release or at least shortly thereafter.
Alex, make sure you're just right in front of it. Sorry.
Oh yeah. No. I gotta eat this mic. So they're we're working so far ahead. We're trying to basically design these products that are going to be featured in the film, oftentimes while they're still wrapping post-production or even shooting the film. So what we'll get a lot of interesting looking things. We'll get like turnarounds for ships. We'll get technical details. We'll get pictures of costumes and characters and stuff. But we almost never get any story.
Sure.
Because it might change and because they're really, tight about that kind of thing. So we have to extrapolate and like guess a lot of the times. And, we make like a mini, starship fighty game. So we don't really need to get that deep into the narrative. Mm-hmm. But occasionally we'll just like not include an important character because we're just looking at all these random characters. We're like, oh, that's a big Yeti with a chain gun. I'll bet he's in there. He's pretty important. Or so we'll make him and then he's like in the background. And like we won't necessarily focus on the character that is actually a major character. Like we didn't really do a K2SO anything for the U-Wing release, which is interesting because everyone was like, well, why didn't they do K2SO? Why did they do Biston? Who's that? It's like, well, we saw a bunch of, costumes. And we were like, I don't know who's going to be important. Well, they've told us Jin and Cassian and Bodhi and whatever, but I don't know. Maybe this Yeti is important.
But
who? No, he's not. But he could have been. If it had been my movie, but he would have been the lead character.
Isn't that in one way that's good for the universe though, because you're giving more time to a character that does exist and is a part of this universe. Like we've seen enough of some stuff, right?
Right.
And so now it could become someone's favorite character, not because it had 2 seconds of screen time, but because they love playing it in your game.
No, it's kind of true actually. Like we've had some of the most random characters be super powerful. And that's always funny to me. Because that's not usually intentional to do that. But if, Boshek, who's, by the way, Boshek, if you don't know this, Boshek is my coworker Frank's favorite Star Wars character for some reason. And 2, he's actually in the film. He has a line of dialogue that is spoken but not audible. So when Obi-Wan and Luke on Tatooine walk into the Mos Eisley Cantina, that wretched hive of scum and or villainy, they're like, we need a ship. And Obi-Wan walks over and talks to this dude in a flight suit, and he's like, ma, 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 and he points. That's it.
Yep.
That guy has a comic book. That dude has an action figure. Like if you were lucky enough to be like a background, if you were like the Wolfman who shows up for like 0.5 seconds in the cantina drinking some green drink, you better believe you've got 6 pages of Wikipedia backstory and an action figure.
Hell yeah.
You're probably in the old CCG, the Decipher CCG. And so occasionally, like one of these rando characters that we just pulled because we're like, we like Wolfman, we'll make him a thing. Occasionally, they're just amazing. Like one of the best, like top tier tournament characters was Dengar's wife, Manaru, who is in one short story, Tales of the Bounty Hunter, for like a second. And by the way, Boba Fett in that was Dengar's best man at the wedding.
Nice.
Dengar and Manaru.
Nice.
So for a while, Manaru was like top, like S tier, like crush. We had to like issue nerfs and errata because she was too strong. And it's just like, who's that? Who knows? Nobody knows. Nobody knows that character.
Dengar's wife.
But now a ton of people know because they're like, oh, Manaru kicked the crap out of me again. The other one is Miranda Donnie. That literally, I think she was like mentioned offhand in one of the late period X-Wing books.
Nice. So every episode of this podcast, I come up with the title based on either something from the podcast or something else that I think is necessary. I don't know what it is yet.
Right.
But I think what I'm going to have to do is dive into these Star Wars names and find the most ridiculous unknown Star Wars name.
Oh, you want to hear my favorite Star Wars character?
Please.
His name is Willrow Hood. And he's the dude in Bespin in Cloud City after the Empire has taken over and Lando has decided not to be a dick. And everybody's running out because shit has hit the fan. This guy,
I know who you're
you
talking
know who
about.
I'm talking
Yep,
about.
I think I know who you're
Tucker
talking about.
knows. Tucker's enough of a nerd. This dude runs across the screen in the background carrying an ice cream maker under his arm. And he is legendary. And it's just like an unaltered ice cream maker. It's clearly an ice cream
needed
maker.
a
It's
prop really quick.
white ice cream maker. It looks sort of Star Warsy. You're like, I don't know what that is. Maybe that's his hard drive. He's got all of his porn on there. He doesn't want to leave it behind in Cloud City. But that guy got fleshed out. He got a backstory. He's actually a rebel agent, and that was vital alliance data or something. Anyway, that is the kind of beauty of the Star Wars universe because it has been so obsessed over for so long. And Kenner has made a toy of everything. If you were in the movie for longer than 0.2 seconds, you have an action figure. And that's kind of beautiful. And we kind of profit from that because there's like entirely too much information about Star Wars out there. Like entirely too much. And we get to pull from that if we need to. So that's pretty cool. We concentrate a lot more on the canonical stuff now because there's so much more of it to pull from. But every once in a while, we'll still need to dip into the Legends material, and they still let us do it, which is pretty cool.
So let's just to pull it away from Star Wars just for a second, even though I know there's no more meat on that bone. Have you done any other games outside of the Star Wars realm?
I did, but it was long ago. Like I got sucked into the Star Wars universe really, really thoroughly. But in my early days there, I did some random stuff. I worked on one of the big box expansions for Descent, which is sort of like this dungeon crawling board game. So I worked on the Labyrinth of Ruin expansion. I worked for entirely too long on this weird expansion to a game called Relic, which is 40K Talisman, which is roll a d6 and some random stuff happens. And for some reason, I was sort of marooned on that project for like 8 months. That's like the most thoroughly tested, like exhaustively engineered random expansion to a board game, perhaps ever. It was entirely too much time spent on it, but it turned out pretty well. So I did that. And then I always wanted to do minis games, and we didn't really used to do that as a company, but I've been playing minis games for a very long time, since I was about 14. Used to play like some really obscure games, Warzone and Chronopia. Chronopia was actually weirdly big in Fargo for like a second.
Really?
Like, yeah. Max Westland used to play it.
Is that because of people like Rich over at Paradox bringing in a copy?
You know, I don't think it was a Rich thing. I mean, Rich is responsible for a lot of nerdery. Rich certainly helped spur the Magic scene, the Star Wars CCG card game scene, Lord of the Rings card games. But
I'd say he's one of the pillars of the nerd community in town here.
Yeah, he's like the
He's
central.
he's an
the
institution.
central column. Yeah, no, the Docs is legendary. Docs is 25 years old.
Yep.
As of pretty soon, I think.
Yeah, they're having their birthday coming up here.
Happy
they asked
birthday,
me
Paradox.
They asked me to play in their celebrity Monopoly game, and I was like, "Well, I'm not a celebrity." And he goes, "You're celebrity enough for these people." And I was like, "Thanks, Rich. Sounds good." And I said,
That's
"Just so you know,
excellent.
I'm cutthroat when it comes to Monopoly
good,
too.
Good.
I'm a
Are they
dick."
Are they playing auction rules? Are they doing it right?
So I asked, I was like, "What kind of home rules are we going to have? Free parking? I mean, what's the deal? Is it taxes only? What's the deal here?"
You know.
Yeah, and he said, "Well, we'll decide it on the day of." And I said, "Okay."
Oh, push for that auction.
It really does change the dynamics
so much
of the
better.
game, right?
Yeah.
It makes you think, do I really want to buy Oriental Avenue right now?
Right.
Is it worth it to have the property?
Should we
or
talk
is
to
it for
the
the
city
cash?
council about maybe renaming it? It's a little problematic in this day and
Yeah,
age.
it is. In
Maybe
fact,
put that on the ballot.
Wouldn't it be great if part of Monopoly, like if they added a political part of it too, where you had to like apply for zoning
like a
laws?
chance
So
card.
JJ, you might be cut out to be a game developer because
I've got ideas.
Well, let me tell you. So the game that kind of kickstarted the whole company, the entirety of Fantasy Flight, is this game called Twilight Imperium, and the guy who started the company designed this game, and he was kind of struggling in the early days. He had founded a company to import European comic books into the American market. Not popular.
Yeah.
Did not sell a lot of those. In fact, I think we still have some in the warehouse. I'm not kidding. But he also designed this random board game and started selling it at trade shows. And what happened was people were buying the hell out of this game and not so much the comic books. So he pivoted into the game design business. He's a pretty good designer. But this game is called Twilight Imperium, and it just got its 4th edition. And this game is just everything. Like, it's like an 8-hour game, like 6 people. You like build starships, colonize planets, like research technology. And there's a whole phase every round where there's a galactic senate. And you actually like pass laws and stuff that impact the game. And so you could certainly graft something like that onto Monopoly, where it's like, oh, corporate tax rate just took a hike, so all your property tax just went up. You better. So that's a beautiful thing about games. Is that, like, you can layer on as much or as little complexity as you want. I try to find a sweet spot somewhere where it's interesting to play, but it's relatively simple. But some people love that super crunchy, granular, like we're gonna reenact the Battle of Algiers for 4 months in our basement. We're going to love it. We're going to calculate rate of fuel loss. It's going to be 6% for the English and only 3% for the Germans because they had better.
And watch out for Legionnaire's disease.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, I kid you not. Like, that would be like a chart you'd have to roll on, I am sure.
Have you guys played the game Secret Hitler?
Yes, that game rules.
It is so much fun.
Super fun.
And it is 100% a game of deception where you are playing your friends. I take the information I really know about Tucker and I exploit it as I try and convince you that I am not Hitler. And I might not be, but I also might be.
You're probably Hitler.
And that's what I think is amazing about board games nowadays is there is a lot that's laid out for you.
Yes.
But the fun of it is you do get to plan how you're going to do this. You're telling the story. You have a hand in telling the story, right?
Yeah, and it's an endless font of human creativity. And if you're interested in narrative, and like I said, I was gonna be a writer before this kind of weird career detour. There's so much room for that kind of narrative stuff in games, like structured or loosely structured narrative. One of the most interesting games that I've played is really fun, and this might actually be something to like look into for like line benders or something as like a long form improv potentially, because it's basically what it is. It's this game called Fiasco. And what it entails is essentially you set up a Coen Brothers plot to fail. And so you all like figure out what your characters are. There's sort of like a scenario generation machine in this, but it's almost entirely improv and like interaction driven.
Sweet.
And the only point of this game is to tell a hilarious story. And that's it.
Oh, I love it.
And
That
it's
sounds
a
amazing.
blast because you really feel like you're in this Coen Brothers movie with a bunch of inept criminals.
We could play that on the podcast.
Oh, that would actually be
I'm
amazing.
gonna order it today.
Yeah, Fiasco's a lot of fun.
Excellent.
And so, but I mean, that's like so barely a game. Like, it's basically structured storytelling, but it is a game because it's people getting together, agreeing to a certain set of rules with the end goal of having fun.
So
that can take so many forms.
Let's unpack this a little bit because I think this is another avenue to kind of talk about. At the very beginning of the podcast, we mentioned that, board games are having like this not just a moment, but the community has been ignited, and I think will be something new. Excuse me. And I wonder how much that has to deal with the fact that in this digital age, people actually really like to have reasons to sit around a table with their friends and play something that's not a computer screen and socialize and use those things. Like, we're kind of going back to that. How much of that do you think is part of the zeitgeist?
Oh, I think it's huge. I think it's a huge driving force. I mean, and I'm a big believer in the value of that. I don't play a lot of online games, they can be fun. I certainly have done it. I used to play a lot of StarCraft and StarCraft 2 and Warcraft 3 and RTSs and stuff. Another sort of dying genre, but yeah, I mean, I think what has happened with video games is they've moved away from that, like, get together with your friends and sit on a couch and play GoldenEye. Like that like multiple controller ports era was incredibly short but sweet. Like from the N64 through like the PS3, I want to say, probably when like Halo came out and online gaming became this big thing that you could just easily do with a console. That whole like hang with your friends in a dorm room or in your parents' TV room and play video games thing is not really doable anymore. They just don't really support that too often. So I think that there's this desire to actually like see people you care about in person. It's more fun. You can riff, you can like laugh together. It's not just you in a headset. So I think that's a big part of it. And yeah, I think this is a increasingly isolated and isolating and disconnected world that we live in. We interact way too much with scrolling through news feeds and a lot of the information. In fact, I mean, like, I'm just as guilty of this. A lot of the things I know about the two of you are because I've been scrolling through Facebook for the past 9 years or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a good side and a bad side, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a good side in that is that because of these things, friends of mine who live far away, even 4 hours away, I can keep up with them in a way that I wouldn't be able to if I didn't have the internet. But then certainly it also lessens the chances of in-person meetings up when they are here.
And I think that it actually lulls you into the sense that you actually are keeping up with them because you're really not.
You're not actually connected, but you are.
You're getting information, but
tricked
you're not.
into thinking that you're connected.
Right.
Yeah.
You
You're
knew
getting
I
a
was in
digest.
Minneapolis last weekend,
Right.
but really, like, did you really know why I was in Minneapolis? Like, how's things really going for JJ nowadays?
Right.
And so I find that where I've got some cousins I haven't talked to in maybe 5 years, but I think that like, oh, I know what Andrew's up to these days. I really don't.
Well, you know the heavily curated and artificially massaged version that he
Right.
puts online, as we all do, as we all sort of carefully craft that's the kind of sick thing about Facebook. Everybody has to be their own PR agent.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole thing is just, this facade. It's like, yes, this stuff happened, but I picked the best picture.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, this year has been terrible, but, I can give you as much or as little information about it as I want to.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't really know that person. You know the image that person wants to put out into the world. And as people get increasingly savvy, media savvy and personally savvy, especially younger kids, that is becoming more and more like built into an upbringing. So I feel like there's a certain amount of like just baked in sort of artificiality to all social interaction in this era. And we didn't grow up with Facebook, which is great. I didn't get it till I was after
God.
No, seriously, right?
Holy
Like
shit.
I didn't get it till I was after college, and I got it so I could keep in touch with people. And I've been very, consciously lately I've been consciously uncoupling from Facebook.
Me too.
And it's been good. But yeah, like you're right. It's unless you're actually seeing people in person or talking on the phone or really interacting with them on a human level, you're missing that. And I think games are a great way to do that because it's a somewhat structured way to interact. And if you haven't seen someone in a while, or if you're maybe socially awkward, like one of the great things about gaming is it has, I think, really, especially this in-person gaming. Like I know for a fact that X-Wing has brought a lot of people out of their shells. A lot of people have social anxiety. A lot of people who have trouble in social settings without a clear structure or context. Like a lot of people just don't want to go to a party because they don't like talking to strangers. They don't like to get out of their comfort zone. They're just going to stand around in the corner with a drink, and that's not very fun. But if they can go and bring their squad to a game store and meet people, and they're like, well, what are we going to do? Well, here are the rules that we are going to abide by. That's a set social interaction that is very easy to understand. There's a built-in community there. And then the other stuff will happen organically. And then before you know it, you have real friends who you are comfortable around. And you just talk to like, peer-to-peer. And that doesn't really happen online. Even if you make a friend online, it's still this sort of disconnected relationship because you have no physical proximity. So this got real deep.
Well, no, yeah, I mean, this is good. If you are an introvert, which I am, that means that other people drain you.
Yep.
And that when you're around your friends, you feel great because you don't feel that same drain. There's not that same sort of social contract that being with even an acquaintance can do. But yeah, then going to a party where you're supposed to, when in those situations, those are people who are putting on a face as well.
Certainly.
Right. And that is exhausting to do in real time and in person. And so that I'd never thought of gaming like that before.
Well, and I hadn't really put a lot of thought into this myself until I started hearing these great stories from people. Because one of the fun things about my job is just interacting with the fans. I mean, there's a toxic side to the gamer community, and I've gotten certainly some backlash for this, that, or the other thing. But by and large, it's been a hugely positive experience because I'm mostly hearing from people who love the game. And I started hearing all these stories about like, hey, gaming changed my life, or this particular game actually helped me get out of a depression or meet people for the first time or feel like I have a community for the first time. And I hadn't really put a lot of thought into that because I'm naturally pretty extroverted, and that was not why I gravitated towards gaming specifically, although I've certainly made a lot of great friends through it. But yeah, I started hearing all these stories, and it just sort of made me think, this is actually like gaming can be a huge social boon because there, in our modern society, there isn't a lot of room for that kind of getting together. Like, unlike the past where you had these sort of regular social groups and clubs and stuff, everything's so fragmented and like global, and people are moving to different places. And as the world gets, more and more kind of interlocked and people get more mobile, the sort of sense of community kind of diminishes to a very real extent. Like, and I think that we desperately, like as human beings, need something to provide that. And for a lot of people, that's gaming. It can be anything, but having that overlay of structure takes a lot of the anxiety out of it for people, I think, which is good.
If I owned a major corporation, I would force my PR or my HR people to include a simple board game as part of an interview.
Sure.
Because you learn a lot about a human being by how they play a game, how they react to a game, whether winning or losing. I mean, let's face it. How many times have you fallen down a wormhole of watching people flip over tables and get so frustrated at a moment versus that other person who just like, oh, no, you can go back and retake this. You didn't mean to do that. Don't worry. You can retro that thing. Mm-hmm. It's no big deal. And watching how those people react to those things, especially when you watch an adult play Candyland, it is insane.
Let's talk about Candyland for a minute. I'm glad you brought that up.
Good. Because I've got an idea for a healthy version of Candyland where they're going through a garden instead, which I think a lot of organic parents would really appreciate.
I think in this day and age, do we really want to be encouraging kids to eat candy? It's not healthy.
Especially when the people are made of candy. Like in the peppermint forest, he's made of peppermint.
Yeah, that's
He's
disturbing.
chopping down like his children and then eating them. I don't know.
This raises more questions than it answers. That's for damn sure.
Keep going.
Candyland is emblematic of fixed destiny. I know. So I'm going to go deep on this one. Candyland is the ultimate form of predestination because as soon as you shuffle the deck of cards and set it down, the game is over. Because
that's interesting.
Because
yeah,
every single thing that happens in that game has already been determined. Because you've determined the player order, you've determined a deck of cards. What happens when you take your turn? You draw a card. You go.
Oh my God, I love this.
Candyland is over before it begins. Your destiny is fixed, and there is nothing you can do to change it because there's no choice.
You're not spinning a dial at all. It is just on what you're flipping over, which is set in stone.
So it is basically like the built universe, where the theory that we all have a fixed thing that is unchangeable, that time is a flat circle, man. Like everything that you do has already been determined. It's already over. and it's happening forever.
Is
and
there a
that's
serious
Candyland.
discussion that took place in like a boardroom at your company where they're like, "You guys, I was reading some Socrates last night, and
they're actually I just realized there were hints of Alex's game creation future in his past. We took video production together at
Hell yeah, we
Trollwood,
did.
and we had a skit called Existentialist in a Box.
Yes.
Which was
Yes.
like a toy or a game that you could buy for your kid.
That's true.
And so I was the kid, and basically you give this kid an existentialist in a box, which would be a box that would spout existentialist phrasings.
oh, lovely.
That was maybe my favorite skit I ever wrote, because that was so like I was that kid, that like overly pseudo profound kid, and it's fun to like poke holes in that. That was maybe my favorite. And there was a lot of great skits at News at Noon, but that was maybe my top, because Bryce was the dad.
Yep, Bryce
and that
was-
was perfect.
Yeah.
And you were great. Tucker's just sitting there going like, "C is for cookie, it's good enough for me." And then Bryce comes in and he's like, "Hey son, I got you a present." And Tucker's like, "What is it?" "Existentialist in a box." And so it just puts the box down, and then it's just talking about how life is pain, and the only recourse is to acknowledge that acknowledge the inherent meaninglessness of life and embrace it with a certain joie de vivre.
Yeah.
And Tucker's supposed to be like 5 or
Like
something.
getting crushed by all of this. Like how I'm gonna lose my mom and my dad. I think everyone I know will die.
Everything will one day pass, like autumn leaves tumbling one by one into the sand.
We also had with Alex and Bryce, my favorite recurring skit was the D&D nerds.
Oh, that was so much fun.
Who was the first 2 characters on those shows that would live their life by D&D rules.
That's right,
Like
that's right.
everything was decided by dice.
Gotta roll that D20.
And my favorite line was they were having an argument, as nerds do, over who would win in a battle, Gandalf or Obi-Wan. And Alex's character says, "But if Obi-Wan took Gandalf in his physical, or if Gandalf took Obi-Wan in his physical form, Obi-Wan would become more powerful than Gandalf could ever imagine."
So it's, I guess it's not too surprising that I do what I do for a career now, because I've been a huge nerd forever.
Now, we didn't talk about the game, I don't think, that you designed.
Oh yeah, no, that's been really fun.
Let's talk about that. Alex is a big deal. Mm-hmm. He's a game designer. People play his game.
I'm like an F-list celebrity.
He's
it's
a
pretty
known
rad.
quantity in the gaming realm.
I bought his game,
Oh,
and
nice.
I had a moment of sticker shock when I saw
It
it,
ain't
and I was like, "Oh my god, okay, well, I better invest some real man hours into this game to make it worthwhile."
It ain't cheap.
And then immediately Rich goes like, "And the expansion pack's coming soon."
Oh,
and I was like, "Wait a minute, there's more right off the bat. You're not even gonna give me like 6 months?"
JJ, this is a lifestyle game.
Obviously,
So,
obviously. So what is it?
it's a game called Star Wars Legion. It's fast and furious action to the Star Wars universe. It's a tabletop miniatures game, and it's like, I would describe it as it's kind of more of the deep end of the pool in terms of games. Like, you don't go from Monopoly to Star Wars Legion. There's a lot of steps in between.
This is meant for someone who would be considered a serious gamer.
Yeah, to an extent. Although I'm also trying to, with this game, reach some people who are, avid gamers but have never dipped their toes into the wargaming world, because the wargaming world is extremely intimidating. Like the really hardcore stuff is like, you got to paint hundreds of little dudes, you got to fashion your own terrain. Like this goes back to like H.G. Wells and like Tiny Wars, and like, when you picture people in their basements just painting 10,000 Napoleonic soldiers and, growing the world's longest beard. And like, this is the world in which I chose to design a game in, kind of.
Because Joe Blow, who goes out there and says, "Well, I'm going to pick up this game," probably doesn't realize that they are involved in the creation of this, in the painting.
Yep.
That's a huge aspect that goes into it.
Yeah, it's a
And
hobby game.
It is
as much as it is about playing the game. It's about customizing your forces. I mean, you got to learn some shit. if you want to. I mean, we have intentionally designed the miniatures and the game itself to be as approachable as possible while still living in this genre. So you don't have to paint anything. We've given you colored bases. We've done our best so that the figures glue together easily and look relatively attractive without paint. But that's just how we get you in. That's how we get you in.
That's how we hook you.
Because, being the huge nerd that I am, like, I started playing these minis games when I was like 14. And I remember getting my mom's like old oil paints out and stuff, which, by the way, painting bare metal with oil paints, possibly the worst approach to miniature gaming. But this is like, pre-internet. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Like, there's a lot better ways to do it. But yeah, I mean, like, it's one of those things where either that sort of aspect of it grabs you or it doesn't. Like, either you want to build and customize your forest and paint it and build terrain, and that really sucks you in. Or you look at that and you're like, oh my God, I already have a job. Why do I want to do that? So it's a specific kind of person who wants to get into this game. So we tried to make the game fun without having to do that. But that is ultimately who it's pitched at, is those war gamers. And I've been playing that kind of game for years. I mean, I've spent hundreds and hundreds of hours painting tiny Warhammer Fantasy Empire dudes, painting all their little feathers. You know what we should do hats.
We should link the other podcast that Alex is on that I was invited on from Paradox.
Oh, yeah. That was a fun one.
Those guys take a really deep dive into this, and you hear me briefly in just a couple moments where I realize I am in over my head. So it took them a good 2.5 hours just to assemble it from the get-go, because these guys are... they're looking at each piece.
This was an entire podcast?
An entire podcast.
So they actually built this while you were on?
While we were on. That's the whole thing. And they have a video component too, so that you can see all the pieces. And then they're like, okay, so that part's done. Now, JJ, we're going to play this game. So you want to? I'm like, it is 10:30 on a school night. Because the game can take, a speed version is what? 2 hours?
Yeah,
probably?
I'd say so.
And then it could go for much longer.
Yes, especially if it's your first game.
Yeah.
No, it's like I said, it's not for the faint of heart. It's for a war game. For a war game, it's nice and simple, but it's still a miniatures war game.
So how does this process happen then for you, since you designed the game? Did you go, hey, I have an idea, should I flesh it out? Or was it, hey, Alex, we want you to make this kind of a game, but you get to design it?
The latter, actually, which is really cool and also completely petrifying. Like, development and game design, I talked about this a little earlier, but development and game design are very, very different. There's a big difference between working on an established rule set and adding content to that, which has its own set of challenges, especially as that goes on and you start running out of ideas or design space. But game design is like, here's a blank page, make an entire game. And that is terrifying. But luckily, I didn't have to do that until I'd already been a developer for 5-ish years, almost 5 years. So I knew some things. I'd learned a lot just by working at the company and working with game designers and working on games and designing aspects of a game. And depending on what you're doing in game development, sometimes you have to do a lot of new rules and a lot of interesting stuff, and sometimes you have to do a little. And there's certainly projects that involve full campaign rules creation and stuff. So I had some experience, and I've also played 1 billion games, and I've been a minis gamer forever. And so I had some ideas of how I wanted it to look. So they're like, we want you to design a somewhat traditional ground-based Star Wars war game. And I was like, fantastic. I know what I want to do. We've never done a full hobby game. We've never done a game where you go and you can play on any table, any custom terrain you want, and there's going to be rules for that. You can build any kind of scenario you want. You want to build an Endor table with a bunch of trees, you can play on that. You want to build Tatooine, you want to build Hoth. You can play on all these different environments and decide whatever every little thing on the tabletop is. And you can go to gaming stores that have all this terrain for other games that operate like this, and you can play on that terrain. And we've never done that before. We're very much a board games company. We're very, even our minis games prior to Legion are all very fixed. They're all flat. It's a minis game, but you play with cardboard tokens that have a specific shape, specific rules. It's all two-dimensional flat movement. We'd never done a full minis game before, really. We'd published Dust Warfare and we'd worked on that rule set, so that was the closest thing. But that wasn't exactly something we did from scratch ourselves. So I knew what I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be this hobby game, but I also knew that there was a lot of stuff about that kind of wargaming that is just unnecessarily tedious. And so part of the thing that I was like, I really hate moving every single guy and measuring for every single guy. So I had to try to come up with a way to get around that. I knew I wanted to simplify range increments and just like get away from some of the granularity and unnecessarily complexity. Like a lot of war games, you like open up a book and you roll on a chart and then like this and that. And I just wanted it to be like immediately engaging. And then I just sort of shamelessly stole mechanics from everything I liked. Like I sort of just took the Quentin Tarantino mashup approach, like where he just, he'll sit down, he'll just watch a million sweet kung fu and samurai movies, and then he'll do Kill Bill. And it owes a ton to that. To all the things that he watched, but it's also sort of uniquely his own.
Yeah.
So I would sort of, if I had to describe my process, it was like, well, I like this mechanic. Well, I like alternate activation. I don't like it when you have to sit there and watch your opponent move their entire army, and all you're doing is taking your guys off the board. That's lame. Oh, I like, games that sort of, you have to sort of deal with not having full control over your army. You have to decide where you want to focus. And I knew that for the biggest thing, the nice thing about having a specific theme is that I knew I wanted it to feel like Star Wars. And Star Wars is very character-centric. It's very hero-centric. Han, Luke, Leia, they're all going to be in the game. So I was able to start with this really great jumping-off point, which was just, well, we want commanders to be leading their other troops to battle. And we want them to have cool abilities and be kind of the focal point for things. So I started layering mechanics on top of that. And I was like, well, how's that going to work on the tabletop? So I came up with like, they'll issue orders to their troops. Well, what does that do? Well, okay, when you have an order, you can activate when you want to. Otherwise, you have to take a random draw. So and if you give more orders out, that means you're taking your time. You are slower, so your opponent gets to activate first. So it's just sort of like it's sort of brick by brick. You're building up this thing, and sometimes you tear it down if it's not working. I had a lot of redesigns and stuff, but it's crazy. It's a crazy process. I worked on it for like a year, and I learned a ton. It's honestly the biggest thing is just iterative design. You just do something, see if it works, play it, decide what you like about it, what stays, what goes, and you do that a few hundred times. And in the end, you have something, if you're lucky, you're kind of happy with sometimes. And I'm mostly happy with Legion, which is like, for a perfectionist like me, that's huge.
And then since there are expansion packs, are you the one leading those designs as well?
Well, sometimes. That's a really cool thing. The thing that I have gotten to experience, and one of my favorite things about the last like year and a half is my friend and coworker, Luke Eddy, got hired by the company right in the tail end of designing the core set of Legion, like the base game. So he got to contribute a little bit, a lot of good stuff to the end of that development, but it was mostly fixed. But what's been really cool is he has been like the lead developer for like the last couple of waves. So I've basically gotten to see what somebody else does with something that I designed, which is awesome. Because I have a huge faith in him, and I love his designs and I love his work. So I just get to be like, hey, Luke, how's Wave 4 looking? What have you been working on? Oh, let's play a game. Let's see what you built with this engine. And I'm like, well, that's awesome. Like, I really like this, but maybe do this a little differently, or what do you think about this? And so getting to have that really collaborative process, and he'll do things with this game that I built that I would never have thought of. Mm-hmm. And that's just hugely cool. It's like, I built this machine, and I get to see him use it to produce this awesome stuff. So that's been just really, really, really cool.
You want to know something else that's really cool?
Yeah.
We're giving away a copy of your game as part of this podcast.
That's fantastic.
So the details will be on our Facebook page after we told you not to go on Facebook for so long.
Well, go on Facebook to win prizes.
Right, yeah. Prizes are the best, We're dwindling down on time here. Alex, thank you so much for coming in, and I hope you come back soon.
I will. Yeah. We didn't even talk about high school.
No, not at all. In fact, I'm thinking maybe the next time is we pack this stuff up and we come to you in Minneapolis.
Hell yes.
Yeah, and we
to my home
get a
studio.
tour. You also, if you want to license JJ Meets World for a tabletop game,
we'll talk.
Let me know.
It's pretty hot. I'll have my people Talk to your people.
Good.
We'll get the board game.
Good.
Going.
I've been dying for this opportunity.
Literally, his people for this podcast is me, and I'm really bad at getting back to people.
Well, and I'm my own people, and I never answer my phone. So,
How about this? I'll just get hold of your mom.
Yeah,
while
talk
I'm
to my
walking
mom.
the dog.
I'll be seeing her at production
she'll make
meetings.
it happen. That's true.
I'll be seeing her
Shout
weekly
out,
now.
Shout out to Deborah Davy.
Yeah.
Hey, Mom.
Davy.
That'll be the good way. Alex, thank you so much for joining us on JJ Meets World.
Thanks for having me.
JJ Meets World.
That wraps it up for this episode. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. And if you've got a couple extra minutes, we sure would appreciate a couple of things. Number one, hit the subscribe button. We're on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, wherever you consume the podcast that you love. So just automatically set that to download every single week, 2 episodes every single week, and then give them a listen at your leisure. Also, while you're doing that, rate us. Give us a great rating. We appreciate that. If you're going to rate us something horrible, don't. Just, give up. Listen to a cooking podcast instead. Also, patreon.com/JJ Meets World is a great way to throw us a couple of bucks. If you enjoy the content that we're putting out, which is over 65 hours of original content for free on the internet, we would appreciate a couple of dollars. Don't have that cup of coffee. Maybe, say, oh, honey, we're going to wait until later to run fiber optics throughout our entire house because I need to give a couple of dollars to JJ Meets World. So, patreon.com/JJ Meets World. Swing over there. And hey, while you're on the internet already, hit up moonbasedmaria.com, which is the internet home of my producer extraordinaire, Tucker Lucas. You can find all sorts of stuff about Tucker and some of his previous work there. If you want to reach out to your host with the most, go over to linebenders.com. Everything is on there, including my standard mailing address for any of you who want to send me, a vial of dandelion seeds or whatever it is. No liquids, though. No liquids. And last but certainly not least, I want to take a moment here to acknowledge some sad news. I recently found out that the dog from the show Wishbone is dead. And he's been dead for a long time. And I think I and the rest of the internet have failed to grieve appropriately for this spunky little pooch. And so let's have a quick moment of silence in honor of Wishbone, whose real name was probably something like Peanut.